Hey folks, Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast, Sunday, August 26th. I've been talking about summer coming to its rightful conclusion, but I'm getting a little excited. Usually not. There's always excitement to be had when the football season's right around the corner. Football just takes away any bad feelings about summer ending immediately. I don't know what people do who don't like football, but they must have their own things that happen once you kick into September. I guess baseball people enjoy that the playoffs and the World Series are coming, but I just love football. But I'm actually trying to plan some things. First off, this coming weekend, which will be Labor Day weekend, I think my wife, son, and I are going to go to Scranton. Now, someone would say, why would you go to Scranton? What a weird Labor Day trip. Because the AAA Yankees play there. I believe they're called the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders. And I just really appreciate the value of minor league baseball. And the AAA season is actually coming to an end this coming weekend, this Labor Day weekend, and then I believe it kicks into its playoffs. But it's really nice. The weather's still great, and the good thing about going to a place like Scranton is you can get good deals because people aren't going to Scranton for Labor Day. So you roll in there, you can see some minor league games, you could stay at a hotel that's nice for good money, for good price, get some dinner in. My parents might actually align with that on their way down from Thousand Islands, and maybe we'll have a night with them, and then maybe we'll stay a night on our own and try to see 2 games, and it just gets you out of the house a little. It's only about an hour and change away from us here in Sparta in the northwest area of New Jersey, and so it's something to do. We did this a couple years ago. We went to Harrisburg for a bit of a longer weekend of Labor Day weekend. It's just fun. It's fun to go to a place that not a lot of people are necessarily going. A lot of people will be going in that vicinity if you're thinking about the Poconos and Lake Wallenpaupack, I think it's called. Those are some nice summer areas, but no one's really going to downtown Scranton. But you can always find a great time. There's always Yelp. There's Google. I enjoy that. I enjoy going to places and unearthing diamonds in the rough. Nice restaurants. There's always chains as well, but you get a nice restaurant. It's not overpriced because of the peak demand of ridiculous amounts of people being there or it being a tourist destination. So it'll be nice. I think we're going to do that this weekend. The other thing that's got me pretty excited is around mid-September, USC is going to be playing in Austin against Texas. And anybody who has listened to this podcast knows the guest Matthew O'Daniels. We always talk college sports, especially college football, college basketball, some baseball when it aligns, but it's mostly the big events around college football and college basketball. Also golf, I guess he was a caddy. He was actually a caddy for many years at Ridgewood Country Club, which is hosting a PGA Tour event this very weekend. And I thought it was cool because I saw a picture where he was covering the event for NBC Charlotte. And I love stories like that when somebody makes their way up in the world and moves on to new pursuits, and then you're able to look back at a place where you actually worked and you're covering it in a more professional capacity. And all of the insights that you can bring to bear could be pretty astounding against other people who might be doing the same job. This is your built-in advantage. You actually walked those greens 36 holes a day in many cases, caddying for folks, understanding every nook and cranny of the course. And so when you're watching it on TV, it comes second nature to you. It's like the back of your hand. You understand every part of it, and that's an advantage. And so everything you do in life can always be brought to advantage at the next levels, the next places you go. We're all very unique, all very individual. We all have our skills, and we all have our talents. And nobody else has that exact mix of skills and talents. Even people who are trying to copy an individual, try to be like an individual, will never even have the same amount of skills or talents or that exact mix, that recipe that all makes you what you are. And I actually heard a funny thing. I forget which podcaster said this, a very famous podcaster, but they were saying that sometimes when you actually try to mimic something, that even though you're trying to copy something, it's going to be different. because it's you. You're doing it. And so it's never going to be exactly like that thing you're copying. So in many ways, it actually ends up being unique itself. So not sure where that went there. But the thing that's exciting here that I was getting to is that Matt will go to several USC football games per year. His dad went to USC, so he kind of grew up really loving the Trojans, and they've had a storied history even through the times he's been watching. Go back to the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush days. They've had a lot of quarterbacks who have come through the mix, who have gone into the NFL, including right now, the New York Jets are making their second shot with a USC quarterback in less than a decade. Now Sam Darnold will be under center, as Mark Sanchez was back in the, 2009, 2010 area. Led them to two conference championships, or two conference championship games, actually beat the Patriots in Foxborough. Pretty amazing run. So it's funny, a lot of people will demean Mark Sanchez, and I think he's still only like 31, 32. Last I saw, I believe he was a backup with the Chicago Bears, and he sort of has become a backup. He's become a bit of a punchline when you think of the butt fumble, that really terrible play where he literally fumbled it off of the offensive lineman's backside, and the other team took it, and I think they ran in for a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of the end of his Jets career was made a mockery. He actually lived on the Westminster, New Jersey Trump property, which is kind of funny now that that's the summer White House, right, where Trump goes many weekends, many weeks during the summertime. But now they're under center here with Sam Darnold, so we'll see how that goes. And a lot of people are looking for Sam Darnold to be a real difference maker. He has the ability and capacity to do that, but we can't forget Mark Sanchez, whether as a manager or whether he was making plays, however you want to break it, he took the team to 2 straight conference championship games and gave a lot of thrills to the fan base. Can't deny that. That was really wedged in between the Giants winning their Super Bowls. So it's unfortunate for the Jets that they were in stark relief to a Giants team who was taking home the championship on Magic. But they kind of snuck in there in those couple of years and provided some positive momentum for the local fan base who were probably watching the Jets, even Giants fans, probably watching the Jets, rooting for them to some degree. But Matt likes to go on these trips, see USC play. And he asked me all the way back last November if I wanted to go on the trip that would be a year later, the next September. And it's crazy when you think about timing, when you think about planning, when you look that far in advance and think to yourself, I don't want to book something for that far in advance. But like life, it moves quick, and before you know it, you're already on the precipice of that. So you're better off planning. You really are. Men are better off planning like women do. Women are very good planners, and don't get caught up in agreeing to do something and then worrying that it's so far in the future. We always want the immediate gratification, the satisfaction of a decision to happen within a pretty short timeline ahead. But sometimes you got to plan in the future. And I didn't. We had some things go on that was around the time of the unfortunate miscarriage we had, so that was a tough subject to be bringing up at the time. And now we're obviously pregnant as well. We made that announcement, I think it was last week now. So there's always something in the way of being able to maybe go and do a trip like this. There really is. But it's important in the short time we have on this earth, no matter how long we live, when we talk about how quick life goes, to try to do things, to try to go and take in experiences. Because I'm 36 already. It's crazy how quick I got here. I used to do these kind of trips all the time when I was younger. I would do them by myself. I remember going to Portland and Seattle by myself following a Nets trip. I remember going to the Miami area and Port St. Lucie to follow Jose Reyes coming back from injury many years ago. I did these kind of trips a lot, and I would do them alone, so I had no problem with it. But you get into family life, you have kids, you have a wife, you have a schedule with a work schedule where you get 3 weeks of vacation, which in my case is actually a very good amount of vacation in general. But still, 3 weeks that you have to go and do what you want. And a lot of that time will get put towards family pursuits, which it should. That's necessary. But you end up just hanging out with your family, basically. And then beyond that, you most of the time end up hanging out with your extended family, the family you grew up with. And then before you know it, you're not really spending a lot of time with friends. Maybe I get together with friends who are not in my work. I get together with them maybe once a quarter. And that's important to cultivate those relationships still. It's very important to keep that in the mix. And I have not done that. It's not something I have gone out of my way to not do, but it's something that I have not done. And so this opportunity has been sitting there since last November, since I got the word from my friend Matt, hey, I'd love you to go. And as time's gone on leading up to this, I've just kind of kept it on the back burner. I thought, I don't know. I'm not going to do this. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a friend of mine at the local coffee place who waits out the traffic before he makes his commute. He goes into New York City. He actually works at Google. I go into Newark. So we're on a lot of the same schedule, waiting out the same traffic. He's got to go a little further than I do, but it's the same kind of leaving time from the same perch. We're going to be going on the same highways. And he was telling me, this is a guy who travels all the time, all year. And on top of it, we'll still make time to go with friends to see West Virginia's his team. So he'll go see West Virginia at certain places. And this guy's been away a lot. And I'm talking to him, and he said, yeah, I'm going to be going to Charlotte next weekend to see West Virginia play. I think it's Tennessee. And he has an amazing schedule. He's going to be taking his parents back to West Virginia, where he grew up and where they still live, I think in the Morgantown area where the University of West Virginia is. He's going to take them back there. Then he's going to wake up early the next morning and drive up to Pittsburgh. It's probably a couple hours at that point, and then fly from Pittsburgh to Charlotte, spend like maybe 36 hours in Charlotte, see this game, pop your head on a pillow for a little bit, and then ultimately fly back to New York, to our area, to be back home. And this is a guy who's like 10 years older than I am, and he's a guy who has a lot more money and a lot more disposable income to be doing these kinds of trips. But overall, why can he do these and I can't do these? And I was talking to him, and really the key is early on in a relationship, setting the expectations of what you like to do. And my issue is that in the time I've known my wife, to be fair to her, which is coming up on 11 years now that I've known her, I have never really done these kind of friend trips where you go to Vegas for a weekend, or you go to a golf course for 4 days, a long weekend, or you do this trip to see a team play, or do that trip. I had no real college experience with a team. I went to NYU, which I think is a Division III team. So I had no real connection to a team like if you went to Syracuse like my brother did, or he went on to actually Villanova for law school as well. You get to those teams, and all of a sudden you can build weekends, you can build outings and get-togethers around those big games that they will inevitably have. And I don't have that as much. And I also I'm a homebody. So time goes on and I end up not doing a lot of stuff. I end up not partaking in a lot of things. And I always convince myself, hey, I got my big TV. I got my sports packages. I have everything I need here to be able to watch it in HD, and I'm fine. And when it's over, I'm home. But sometimes the experience, the journey, is just as important as the actual event. And being together with people and experiencing life with different points of view and different frames of reference, and sitting around a bar one night and talking to friends who used to be so close to you, and through time and through people moving to new places, you don't get that same amount of time to kind of talk with them. And then all of a sudden, something they say might inform your marriage or your upbringing of your child that makes you all feel sort of at one with each other. You're all helping each other just by talking about your experiences, and it makes you come home a refreshed individual. You had that chance to do that thing by yourself, and then you come out of it and you're in good shape. You come home a refreshed individual, a refreshed parent, a refreshed marriage partner, and it's something that's really good. So I'm really looking to do this now. I think it's the 11th hour, but I'm really looking to get into doing this. We're about 2 to 3 weeks away from this game, and it's something that I'm aggressively going after at this point. I am looking up flights. I'm looking up every which way I can do it. And look, my wife's pregnant. She's still very sick with the morning sickness stuff. She's got to deal with a 2B4-year-old who can be a handful. Great kid, but he can be a handful. And you're running up against a lot of limitations and parameters that in any other world, you really should say no. But in this world, I'm thinking to myself, hey, I want to try to do this. So I said, hey, let's see if I can do this game. So the game is actually on Saturday, September 15th in Austin at the University of Texas. USC's rolling in there. They don't have Darnold anymore, but they apparently have a new up-and-coming quarterback, as they always do. I think he's a true freshman, possibly. I think I read that he might actually still be in high school if he didn't advance in his studies in high school to kind of jump up to the college level quicker, kind of like a Doogie Howser of football, college football. So they're playing September 15th, 8 p.m. in Austin. I'm looking up all these flights, and it's hard because the flights are round trip like $500, like $600, and that's to leave at 7 a.m. on so let me get back to my logistics. I don't want to be away from home too much. This is one of the first times I'm trying to pull off one of these trips, so I don't want to be going Thursday. The group who I'm meeting, so my friend Matt, his brother, and a gentleman named John are going to be coming in from New Orleans actually that day because they're having a little bit of a road trip on this thing. So they're going to be coming in on Friday, and they're going to be there probably around 3, 4, 5 p.m. on Friday. The game is Saturday night, and then I think they said on that Sunday, which is the 16th, they're going to continue on to Dallas. So I'm really looking at something flying in on Friday, flying back on Sunday. For me, I like early mornings. I don't mind getting into town early, and I don't mind trying to get to the airport and getting home early on Sunday before NFL football too. So that's a great little thing, although that might be tough to get home after a couple of days away and then all of a sudden tell my wife and son, sorry guys, I got to get into the NFL Sunday here after my wife has done everything to hold it all together here. So I'm kind of looking at a Friday through Sunday, and I'm looking at these flights, and they're expensive. They're like $500-$600 round trip, and I'm getting my dad involved in it because he's a big traveler. He loves looking for deals. He understands deals. He understands all the rules of flight. He travels a lot, and he's shocked. He can't find a better deal. He's finding trips to China on Air China that are cheaper than a back and forth to Austin, Texas for a couple days from Newark. Then he brought up, hey, what about Houston? And I started thinking, Houston's interesting. And so now, again, I'm liking the journey idea here, not necessarily the destination, but the journey. I'm thinking, hey, I can get out on the road. I can spread my wings. I could be an individual again. So I'm looking at flights. All of a sudden, I come across an airline, Spirit Airlines. Now, it's so much cheaper than the competitors that you're very suspect as to what could be behind that. And you read up on it, and it's like, you basically can't bring on a carry-on unless it's the size of a woman's purse or a tiny backpack, whatever that means. So it's a bare bones flight. You can't even recline the chairs. You don't have any seat space or leg space in front of you. There's no entertainment options. There's no plugs. It's bare bones, as they say. And anything you want to add to it, if you want to get your bags checked, you want to do this, that's when the price starts jumping up massively. And when you got to do the normal things you do on a flight, now the price is in line with a lot of the competitors. But I'm trying to figure myself, can I do this bare bones? Can I almost get one of those like tiny little backpacks that you might wear to go to the gym just for an afternoon, where you have like one set of clothes, maybe a towel? Can I try to pull this off? Because the Friday flight with Spirit Airlines leaves Newark Airport, which I love. I love the idea of just being able to go to Newark. Leaves Newark Airport about 11:25 a.m. Eastern Time and lands in Houston, Texas at about 2:25 or so, which I guess that's Central Time. And so I like that idea, dropping in there. And then I'm thinking, how can I get, though, from Houston to Austin? It's like a 2-hour, 45-minute trip. Then I'm looking, hey, Matt and his crew are going to be coming from New Orleans that morning. Maybe they could pick me up and we can drop into Austin together. Boy, that's a cool old school, almost college-like trip there. And then I'm thinking, but how do I get back? It's a 6 a.m. flight out of Houston back on Sunday morning with the game being 8 p.m. on Saturday night. And I'm thinking Uber's not an option because that's going to blow the price up and all of a sudden you'll be paying as much as if you had just flown to Austin. So then I start looking up car rentals. And unless I'm mistaken, and when I get deeper into it, other costs will appear, it looks like you could rent a very low economy car for like $15 a day. So now I'm excited. Now I'm thinking I could fly into Houston, George Bush Airport. I can rent a car at about 2:30. Maybe I'm out of there by 3 since I'm going to have no carry-ons. I get in the car and I can drive on the open Texas roads from Houston to Austin, about a 2 hour 45 minute trip. And maybe I'm into Austin by 6 p.m. The other group had just gotten in there. They get checked in. And then all of a sudden, you're walking around downtown Austin, a happening place. You're rolling into bars, restaurants, all this. It's that feeling of being in Austin downtown at 7, 8 p.m. The world is yours. You're on your own for a minute, and you had just driven in. Who knows what towns I would stop in on the way, with the tumbleweed flowing through, and I'm making this stuff up in my head. It's just fun to be in a different place for a second. So this new kind of foil to this new piece that's introduced, actually to me makes the trip a little cooler. And so that's getting in. So now you have Friday night, then you have all of Saturday. Maybe I try to sleep in on that Saturday. I haven't been able to sleep in with my son, obviously, waking up at 6 or 6:30 or at best 7:10, which is a once in a while thing in the morning. I've never slept past 7:10 a.m. probably in a couple years. I mean, maybe I've had a here or there where I've gone away on a business trip, but even those you have to be up kind of early because you have somewhere to be most of the time. But I've not slept in years, probably close to since he's been born, and he'll be 4 in November. It's been years. And even before that, my wife and I would still get up no later than 7:30, and we'd get in our car, get a coffee, and go to the gym. But here, maybe I sleep in. Then we kind of have Saturday to go about the town, to have a nice day in Austin, and then eventually make our way to the game for the 8 p.m. start, obviously in Central Time. Or no, maybe that's Eastern if I'm actually looking at on here. So maybe it's actually a 7 p.m. Start on that time. And so we can see that game, watch the whole thing, maybe even get a couple drinks even during the game. That's over, walk back to the hotel, and my idea here is I have to be back at that airport for a 6 a.m. flight. This is, again, if I do this. I haven't booked any of this. I actually put a Facebook message about, has anyone used Spirit Airlines? And it looks like I'm getting a lot of commentary, a lot of don't do it. It's these problems, so I got to look into that more. My gut is I'm probably going to end up doing it because that's a good price. Although, with how quick moving the trip is, I can't have problems. I can't have delays. I can't have this flight not happen, because then all of a sudden it's a completely wasted trip. This thing is so tight, this schedule, that everything has to go completely right. So I'm kind of looking at this as, if this works out, we go to the game, and then you could say, hey, go back to the hotel, get a couple hours of sleep, and then you still got a 2 hour, 40-minute drive back. Maybe it's 2.5 hours in the middle of the night when there's not much traffic on the road, but it's still like you got to give yourself probably 3 hours. You probably got to give that. So it's not going to make sense because you always got to be at an airport at least an hour early most of the time. So we're looking at like 5 a.m. That would mean waking up at 2 and then immediately leaving. So my idea is actually, which is kind of exciting, even though on the other end of it, I would probably be really disappointed and I'd hate myself that week at work when I got no sleep. But my thought is roll back to the hotel after the game, get in the car at that time. It'll probably be 10 or 11 p.m. Central Time, and then just roll right back to Houston Airport, right back to George W. Bush. So if you're thinking you leave there at the latest 11 local time, you're looking at a 3-hour trip. Maybe you're back to the airport by 2, check the car back in at that time, and then just walk up to the gate and maybe try to get like an hour or 2 of sleep at the gate without oversleeping, and then just get on that flight at 6 a.m., possibly sleep on the flight. Although I guess if this Spirit Airlines has no reclining seats, that would be an issue. But who cares? If I make it, if I get on that flight, it says I'm back home by 10:42 a.m., which is amazing when you gain the hour back and you're going with the headwinds back east. And I could actually be back at my house before noon. That to me is cool. That's like 007 James Bond type stuff, except all I did was go to Texas. So there's a lot of this, if this can work out, that I'm very excited about. I really look forward to the idea of going to a different airport, driving a Texas highway or 2 hours, 45 minutes, even if it's by myself. Andy, if you're listening, you still could potentially go if it works out. But this is the plan, man, because Andy will listen to this sometimes. He's another guy who's in the mix if he wants to go. But it's gotten a little more complicated. But to me, it's come more into focus. I'm very excited about this plan. So basically, get on that flight, 11 a.m. Eastern Time Friday, which is not that bad, actually, traveling to get to Newark at that time. You have a little bit of time to even get yourself situated there comfortably. There's apparently no drink service on the flight. Everything is a charge. Bottles of water, everything. So maybe I'd roll on there with my own coffee, some water, maybe a little something to eat, stow it away in my pockets because you basically can't carry on anything else. And then just take that flight down there, and then that open world feeling of a Friday, landing in Houston, Texas at 2:30 in the afternoon, renting a car and just driving the open roads, those Texas highways, listening to podcasts, listening to music, and then just coming into Austin. I've been to Austin before, but I don't remember it at all. This was probably, I went with Matt O'Daniels, I think. We might have even only stopped in when we were maybe 18 or 19 years old. And we did sort of a half cross-country trip. We went down and around through Texas and then back up the East Coast around June time in maybe 2001. Yeah, so I think it was right before 9/11, actually. And so I like this. I like this idea. Roll into Austin, which I haven't been to. Get that rental car. Hopefully $15 a day or so. Even if it's $20 a day, that's not terrible. I could be all in for $50 if I return that thing in the early morning hours of Sunday. Roll in there. You've had the cool ride out there. Who knows where you stop? You go to certain places, and yeah, I'm kind of excited by this plan. And then even the Saturday night thing, I'm excited. My wife worries for me. She's like, oh, it'll be so hard sleeping. My dad would worry about those kind of things too, because he really is bad at night. I mean, now his eyesight's a little funky too, but he's always been a morning guy. Nighttime, he gets afraid of driving. He gets afraid when other people are driving. But if I play my cards right, if I sleep in a bit on Saturday, boy, would that be a luxury for the first time in years. Kind of underplay the coffee maybe through the day. Maybe have a couple drinks around game time. And then after the game, maybe get myself a nice coffee for the ride back to Houston. And that very secure feeling of being back at the Houston airport by like 3, 4 a.m., it's kind of cool to me. And then all of a sudden you just roll up onto the plane, which hopefully would work out. We'll see after I read all this commentary on Facebook from people if what's it called here? How Spirit Airlines comes off, because it looks like a lot of people have opinions on this, which is kind of killing my high. I kind of asked it hoping that people would go, oh no, it really does work out. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Oh my gosh. So I said, anybody use Spirit Airlines? Worst experience ever from one. Don't. They overbooked our flight by 20 people, told everyone to stand in a corner while they did something. And then when people started getting annoyed and asking what was going on, all the desk agents walked into the back and wouldn't come out. And so I said, where were you going? I think we were going to Jamaica. This was in 2009-ish. From other people's stories, I've heard it hasn't really improved a ton since then. Then someone said they are the Ryan Airways of the U.S. Then someone else said, don't do it unless you're okay with being stuck at your destination if there are any cancellations. Bigger airlines will book you on another flight. Spirit will just say, sorry, your flight is canceled. Here's your refund. Good luck getting home. So that is something to keep in mind there. I don't know about that. We'll have to see. That's a good point. So I like my idea here, though. And look, the flight was like $180 round trip, and the other guys are like $550 round trip. That's a huge difference. And on principle, that amount bothers me. Just on principle, I almost don't want to do it. Let's see, my wife texted me here. Let's just text her back so I can keep going with this. He is sleeping still. I got my little Nest Cam on the side here, making sure that my son is still sleeping, because now that he's in a bed, you can't do these podcasts and then you see him get up. He's up and he's looking around yelling for people. When he's in a crib, it's safe basically until you're ready. So we'll see that. But I like this idea. A part of me almost might. It's funny when you get your foot in the door on something and you've decided you're going to do it. I might, after all is said and done, go up to the higher priced airline to be safe, because I got this Spirit Airlines thing, 180 round trip, and I'm seeing all these people complain about this, but is it really going to be a problem if I'm going Newark to Houston in September? There shouldn't be really weather issues. There shouldn't be a killer amount of people going to Houston at that time. And obviously Houston is one of the kind of flagship airports for United, and so is Newark. So Newark to Houston could be a good run. The prices were killing me. On principle, I don't want to spend that much. My dad was like, you could go to China for less on Air China. And I don't know if I want to go on that plane either. If you can go to China for less than $500, that's a little scary. Although I guess it's state subsidized. But yeah, this is my plan. I almost want to do it because I just want to get that open road, anything goes feeling going, what was that movie? Nocturnal Animals, of course. That was scary. Where you're driving on the road, dark. Was that Texas? Where you're driving on the dark road? No, that might have been California. But same thing. Those sort of western roads where it's dark, tumbleweed. I don't know. I'm excited though. Rent a car and just do what you do. I don't know, but the Spirit Airlines thing is worrying me a little bit. Because enough don't do it's worst experience ever. This is like a really... I mean, if people were making these up to hurt the stock price of the company, you couldn't do better. So, I don't know. I guess I got to try it. But this is my thought. I want to get to this game. I want to be in Austin, Texas for a minute, and come home a refreshed man. Let's see. Is there anything else that is on the docket here that I could talk about? Yeah, I guess why don't we talk about this? So. I don't know if anyone saw this, but AT&T bought Time Warner, which means that AT&T now owns HBO. And HBO is a premier content destination, obviously. People pay anywhere from $15 to $20 a month for it, whether you're buying it as a standalone streaming subscription through HBO Now, or if you have a cable provider, which you buy it on the back of, which can get anywhere up to $20 I've seen. One of the really good deals actually of DirecTV Now, their streaming service, is that at any one of the levels that you purchase for the streaming, all the way, as low as $40, they just bumped up $5. They used to be $35. All their tiers bumped up $5. So it's like 40, I think 55, 75, and whatever the next level is. But you can get HBO on any of those for $5 a month, which is a tremendous deal for HBO, because obviously DirecTV Now, owned now by AT&T, Time Warner. I'm forgetting my mix here, but because of sort of a parent-child relationship, they offer it at an amazingly subsidized rate, so $5. But AT&T took over HBO. An AT&T executive walked into a meeting of HBO. I think it was a State of the Union type of meeting, a yearly look back and look forward on how great things have been and what everybody's done and all that. And so he rolled into the meeting and basically said, "You need to be Netflix. We need to be churning more content. We need to be just constantly putting stuff out there. We need more people spending more time on the platform, treating it like Netflix." And initially, a lot of people were like, "That's not fair. You can't do that to HBO. It's prestige. It's this, it's that." And I understand that point of view. But I also was sort of like, they probably could use a little bit of Netflix in them. So if you're paying $15 a month for HBO now, if you buy it through streaming, so if you're going apples to apples with streaming versus streaming, you're paying $15 a month. And then Netflix, I think they keep bumping up a little bit, but I think you're paying like maybe $11 or $12 a month for Netflix. And the amount of stuff Netflix is putting out there, the amount of subscribers they're getting, which is like 130 million, I think, or something like that. Why can't HBO get a little of that? Now, I'm happy with HBO. Now, of course, I don't actually pay for HBO. I get the HBO Go off of my parents' cable account, so they're not using HBO Go. They're using HBO, so I think of it as not an issue. I mean, it's never an issue. A lot of people do this with logins, but I take HBO Go and I log in through the credentials from my parents. There's actually two I can work with. I have the Time Warner, which is now Charter Spectrum, from the old place I lived in in Edgewater, or I could get their Optimum, which is what they have at home, and I can get HBO Go. HBO is tremendous. It's great. It doesn't put out as much content as Netflix does, which is going to be like 500, 600, 700 original programs, I think, this year or next year. I mean, it's an absurd amount. Their churn is just unbelievable. You can't watch this much TV. But HBO, as opposed to quantity, and look, Netflix has quantity and they do have quality, but with the amount you put out, it's like, what is quality? And they're building to audiences that we don't even realize, because they realize that with the numbers they have of subscribers, they can meaningfully target a pretty huge cache of subscribers with a show, with a language show, with an angle, a specific audience that maybe we're not thinking of in primetime television or cable. They can target at that, and it works out just fine. HBO just sort of goes straight curator. We'll come up with the ideas. We won't worry about, I mean, they care about the customer, obviously, but they're sort of the tastemaker. For Netflix, they use the tastes of of their subscribers to basically be a mirror and send back to those subscribers exactly what they like and build shows around that. So the tastemaking is done by the users. Now, much like Steve Jobs used to say about Henry Ford, if the customer was in charge with Henry Ford, if the customer was in charge, we would just be making faster. We'd be trying to make faster horses. I wanted to make a car. And Steve Jobs was a lot like that. He was like, if I followed what the customer said, then we wouldn't be doing as well as we are. I'm coming up in my mind with what I believe people will want now and in the future. And that ended up being true. That bargain ended up being true. Sometimes when you listen to the customer, you don't end up getting something that's going to last and be very meaningful over time, because it's just in their head and it doesn't create wonder and awe in them. It's just sort of like, oh, this is what I wanted. Yep, that's what I wanted. That's what it is. It's sort of in the business I work in, where you build websites primarily. A lot of times the client will say, this is what we want. And then you'll design what they want and show it to them. And they're like, oh, this is terrible. They'll eventually always say, this is terrible. This isn't what we like. And they'll always say, no, we want you to tell us what we want. So it's better to start there. I always think, come out with, have the client tell you what they want, and then build something completely different, and then convince them that there's elements of what they wanted in what you've shown them, and they'll always be happy with it. Sometimes when you tell people what you want, it doesn't last because it's not exciting. You sort of want awe and wonderment. You don't want just what you want, because if you we want to be brought outside of our head. We don't want to be brought back into it necessarily. So HBO creates shows that try to stand the test of time, quality more than quantity. Now, the problem is when you have a couple of misses, that's a bad year. That's a bad quarter, because you're only coming out with so many shows. But like what I just went through, I just watched the show Succession on HBO. I watched that show in like a week. And it started out where I saw the previews for it, and I wasn't really understanding what the previews were saying. I didn't understand what the show was. It's very unclear in a trailer, in a preview, what the show is. It doesn't feel like anything out there. And so because of that, I wasn't like, oh, I got to watch this. I got to see this. Because it's one of those shows you have to watch and let it grow on you. And it takes time. It takes hours to understand why it's the best show on television, which I believe it really is right now. And so that show comes out. And eventually, I'm hearing from different people, from reviewers I follow, all that. Oh my God, this show caught. This is the best show on TV right now, blah, blah, blah. So maybe 5 episodes in at that time, I'm like, oh, I got to start watching this. I start watching it, and it's sort of slow moving at first. It drops you into the show as if there were 5 episodes before it that you didn't see, which can be a tough way to go. But when it works, it pays off immensely, because then what happens is the season backfills in those pieces that you're dropped in on that you didn't know, and that makes it much more rewarding. So this show is great. And at the end of it, I'm sitting there going, there's nothing on Netflix that touches Succession. No matter how many shows Netflix has, nothing is like Succession. They don't have their Succession. And they have really good shows. I mean, when you think of Stranger Things, when you think of even their docs like Making a Murderer, I love that Trump documentary. But a lot of it feels chorish. Like I open Netflix and I always sit there and after opening Netflix, which I'll open up every couple of days if I don't have something to watch, I'll just look. And I spend probably 15 minutes just in awe of all the content that is there, as opposed to playing something and watching it. Because your feeling is, oh my God, each time I press play on any new thing here, this is 10 hours of my life coming up. This is probably 10 to 13 hours of my life. And if I start it, I'm going to want to finish it. But it sort of feels like an onerous chore. It doesn't feel like something that's special. You're also watching it in a silo. No one else is watching that show at the same time, and hence no one is talking about it. When Succession came out, I was able to catch up with the show and basically watch the finale within an hour of when the finale had actually come out. By the time I caught up, I was watching like 3 episodes that night and then watched the finale. And the finale paid off so well that then the Twitter conversation that was happening was amazing. All the inside jokes, all of the Twitter commentary of goose eggs and deeper meanings and all this stuff, and great scenes, great characters. And there are a ton of great characters. It's just such a great show. I tweeted something and one of the cool characters on the show, the actual actor, liked my tweet. So they're into this show. It's like their startup. They're believing in it as if they came out with a product themselves and they want to see its success because it's that good, and they want to keep going with seasons and being around these great actors and being around these great stories, which, by the way, has Adam McKay behind it. It has elements of people who I think were in Veep behind it. It has every aspect in this show that's great on TV. It has the comedy. It has the drama. It has the boardroom intrigue. It has the New York City power play aspect. It's so good. It has the family and Succession, hence the title name aspect. It's got so much going on in it that you just are always in awe. It's sort of leading you to where the media should go, as opposed to giving back to you what you want. And that, to me, is the most rewarding payoff. You don't know where a lot of this stuff is going. It turns on a dime. It's sort of like it's like a band who comes out with a demo and they're just like, their songs are all over the place and they're not necessarily following traditional templates of a song with like a verse, a chorus, a bridge, a verse, a chorus, an end, you know. It's all over, but it's like people at the top of their craft doing it. So in all aspects, you appreciate it. There could be 10 spin-offs from this show. It's that good, and it has its roster is that deep. But Netflix doesn't have that. I mean, I'm watching Better Call Saul as well, and that is a spinoff, and that show is still so deep on AMC. Obviously, the spinoff of Breaking Bad, which was probably one of the top 3 television shows of all time. This show, Better Call Saul, is more rewarding than anything you find on Netflix. Now, thankfully, it's on Netflix. It's older episodes and seasons are on Netflix, so I've actually been catching up there. So I guess I am on Netflix with their licensing deals with the show. But there's just not shows that good. And I think because of the way Netflix does it, where they just release seasons at once, where nobody's watching these things together, where there's not a build-up, sort of like a football season, like build-up between games, between episodes on a weekly basis, it doesn't give the time to know if some of these shows are amazing. Because you're not sitting there talking about them, digesting them, picking them apart, looking for deeper meaning, looking for Easter eggs. It's very difficult. And I think that's a problem for Netflix, is that they might have so much good content, but you almost don't want to watch the thing where you don't think there's a party behind there. And maybe that's why they should release some of the viewership numbers, because I think I heard somewhere that it's possible that Stranger Things was watched by like 40 or 50 million people. That's insane. So I think if they could tell you the most watched shows and what the numbers behind those are, it might make more people watch it, because they think, hey, I'm going to jump onto a winner. I'm going to jump onto the thing people are watching. If I jump onto that, maybe we'll have more conversations about it. And so I think that's a difficult thing. When you're watching a TV show, which is a very social event, that's probably 25 to 40% of the best part of a TV show is the social aspect of it. The fact that you can talk to other people about it, the book club aspect about it, but you don't have to put a bespoke book club together to talk about it. It's happening in real time. Twitter is that book club. When it's Netflix, you're kind of like, your tweet will be like, oh boy, Iron Fist season 1 was actually a little better watching it a year later than I think a lot of the critics said. There you go. Who's paying attention to that tweet? What hashtag is that hooking into? People who watched it 6 months ago, where's the conversation there? So when you're kind of paying attention and watching something by yourself, it just doesn't feel that special. When you're watching, for instance, The Succession, or when you're watching Better Call Saul, or you're watching shows that are more real time, the discussions around them make the show worth watching in some ways. It's like a catch-22. It's a virtuous cycle. My watching it leads to talking about it. Other people's thoughts on it leads to me watching more. If I watch a show and I'm watching it, it feels like a chore if I'm watching a show that I don't know how many people are watching or what's behind it. Like, it brings up a good point. What is enjoyment? Is enjoyment watching something for its intrinsic value to you, or is enjoyment being a part of something bigger than you, watching something because you know so many people are watching it and that it'll be a great thing to talk about with someone at the next dinner party, or you'll be in the know and eventually they'll be able to watch it? That's a difficult thing. So it brings back to this point, though. AT&T, this executive, wants the New York Times, wants the HBO properties to be more like Netflix. Now, there's probably a fine line there, because maybe Netflix could be a little more like HBO. Does HBO fundamentally change if it's trying to drive many more subscribers to the levels of Netflix? I mean, I've also been in dealing with the HBO app, the HBO Go app. There's some aspects with HBO Go, I think, that they can learn interface-wise from Netflix. When you drop back into HBO, there's no inclination of what you were just watching. Now, if you open it up on a tablet, there will be a little strip along the bottom that'll be like, oh, you have 23 minutes left in this Bill Maher episode. That's great, but if you jump to another show, it doesn't. From what I can see, there's nowhere else to see what you were watching, what you had watched but not finished, what you might want to watch based on what you have watched. There's none of that. There's none of that personalization algorithm. There's sort of, you come into the app and it's like, here's the featured shows, and then here's the series alphabetical, here's the sports stuff, here's that. So there's none of that overlay. So I really think both sides could learn a little from either. I think that the interface and the kind of the drive that happens by telling creators as talented as HBO, the people that HBO signs to do their original content, having in the mind of those that you're going to up the stakes to be, you're not going to reach Amazon, because not Amazon, you're not going to reach Netflix. It's absurd how much content they churn, and like no one will see it, but maybe who cares? Maybe they're using this wall of money they have at this time to get all this content in before the reckoning happens, and before they can't do this anymore, before they can't back and fund this many television shows. By the time that reckoning comes, they'll have had 2,000 original shows in the bank, and then at that point they can hopefully coast on it, or use the intel and analytics they gain from it to know which of those 2,000 are the ones to go all in on. And maybe at that point they change some of their plans and policies on what they want to do with that content. And I think this actually ties in with one of the things that we saw come out in the last week or two about Netflix, that they are talking about the idea of putting ads between episodes of shows. People went nuts. They're like, no way, you can't put ads between episodes of shows. This is supposed to be a subscription-based product. You were never going to do ads. This isn't right. And they were saying, from what I read, that they're actually only going to put ads for other shows on their platform in between episodes, not in episodes, in between episodes. And there's a part of that might be a little smart, actually, because that might be the discovery engine to get people to understand what other shows they have. I only knew about Succession because I would watch other HBO shows. I would watch Bill Maher. Even when my wife and I were watching Big Little Lies all these years later after it came out, before every episode, there would be a Succession ad. Before Bill Maher, there's a Succession ad. Before John Oliver, there would be a Succession ad. And so I was very aware of this billboard-like aspect in the app of this show. And I would see it, and I was aware of it. It didn't make me want to watch it. It was seeing it and then hearing people talk 4 or 5 episodes in that there's something you have to watch, that I then dove in and watched it. Many times, though, I'll wait till the season's over, and then when people are like, oh, you got to see this, I then will go back. It was cool to kind of watch it and then catch up in real time to meet the end and to kind of talk about it with people and to be in the know on a show that everyone needs to be watching and no one was watching. In my circle of friends, when I went and told people, you have to watch this, you don't understand how good this show is. And then, they got to get into it and do it. But I think that's what Netflix is getting at, is these 700 shows are great and all, but people have to understand what to watch, and people have to understand what is there. There's just so much. And that's just Netflix shows. What about all the shows they license to bring onto the platform? The old archive seasons, The Walking Deads, all these shows. So I think it's something that's interesting. So I really believe I was not as down on this HBO side, where the AT&T person came in and said, we got to be more like HBO, because or Netflix. I think there is a little where HBO actually needs to be like Netflix. And it's honestly, though, not in the way the AT&T executive said, where it's like, we got to churn more content. We have to have people spending more minutes in our app ecosystem, in our world, in our HBO world. I think it's you got to bring Netflix interface to the HBO experience. It is just a well of content on HBO that you have to know what you're looking for, and you have to seek it. You have to find it. There's no discovery. There's no serendipity. There's no tie into what you've watched before. This is what you'll want to watch. There's no interface that you come on and all of a sudden here's this is the last 5 shows you've been watching, and here's where you left off with those shows. There's none of that. Now, it's funny because when you tie it into the HBO, or sorry, to the Apple TV app, it does do that. It tells you where you left off on all these shows. So maybe that's what HBO needs to do. Maybe they'll be better off. Maybe it keeps people in the app without having to create so much more content. Maybe that's the thing. And look, Netflix can learn from HBO with the quality. They can start backing some of these people, and we'll see with Shonda Rhimes coming over, with Ryan Murphy coming over. Isn't Barish or Kenyon Barris, I think their name is, who did Blackish. I think they might be coming over to Netflix. So we'll see as those new ecosystems from Tastemakers hits the platform without the limitations of network TV. But sometimes limitations are good because it makes you innovate in different ways that you wouldn't otherwise. So we'll see. But why don't we call it there? We'll see where I end up with my trip. And we'll take it from there. So thanks, folks. I'll talk to you soon.